Dr. Pat Madden, I'm so happy to have you on board with us.
I am very honored. And Ingrid, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Whoops, something just happened. I lost Michael.
No, you lost me.
Oh, there you are. I lost Ingrid. There she is.
She's very elegant, wearing her red blouse and
my red jacket.
Jacket.
I like it.
Thank you.
Well, I'm wearing my Les Mis shirt. I thought it was that.
Oh, it's Les Mis.
Yes, I thought I told you.
You're a Victor Hugo fan.
Oh, I love Victor Hugo. Of course, who wouldn't?
That's true.
He loved America, actually.
He loved America, and he hated Napoleon III with a passion. You know that, right?
Napoleon III. Wasn't there something about a Paris Commune and Karl Marx?
Well, okay, he came to power as a result of the Commune, and then he was kicked out because of the friggin' Germans getting into France and
all those Germans.
Always the Germans.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. And Jim, nice seeing you again.
Yeah, nice seeing you.
Yeah, this is fun. There he is. You almost look like an MIT professor or something.
Who, me?
No, Jim.
Right.
He's a scientist. He's simply a scientist.
Oh, simply.
Yeah.
I'm on
scientist.
There's what's that?
MIT scientist.
No, okay. Yeah, I kind of figured that. I'm just teasing. So you really do want me to talk about healthcare in Massachusetts? What happened?
Just a little quickly, yes, if you can.
Okay, I'll try as fast as I can.
Okay.
Let's see. It all began in approximately October 2011. Massachusetts, certain people in government Massachusetts made a deal with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the best commercial health plan in Massachusetts, which is a terrible one nationally, but it's the best they had there. And they worked with certain other hospital systems that concocted a plan to try to make the eastern third of Massachusetts the flagship, they called it, for Obamacare. And what happened was one of the hospital systems that really got into it was a man that was Ralph De La Torre. Dr. Ralph De La Torre was a cardiothoracic surgeon. He was a Harvard boy, but he's originally from Florida. And he came up to Massachusetts. He ran or worked with the Catholic Archdiocese system of hospitals. It was called Caritas Christi. Then he took it over and got what he said was a loan, but actually he sold out to a giant corporation called Cerberus. And he met with Mr. and Mrs. Obama in his place in Newton with his wife, and they concocted this plan where certain groups would get together and take an extension of Obamacare in a unique, rather twisted way called the Pioneer Project. What they did was this voluntary part of the Obamacare Act was such that some Medicare patients would work with some doctors, would work with some hospitals, and try to cut costs for the federal government. And so they wanted to take that concept and force it on the eastern third of Massachusetts, where 2/3 of the population live, and try to ramp it up, shall we say. So what ended up happening was 5 systems ended up joining. One was a huge group of outpatient, mostly doctors, primary care's Mount Auburn Hospital. Then there was Partners, Beth Israel Deaconess, at South Shore Hospital, the second largest emergency room in the Northeast, was at little old South Shore Hospital. And I'm trying to remember who else was there. Oh, of course, Steward Healthcare Network, which was the old Caritas Christi. They were the ones. But mainly Steward, which turned a Catholic Archdiocese hospital system, which was poor, and turned it to a for-profit hospital system. Awful things happened, one of which was in primary care offices. They said that's what they needed to be the gatekeepers. They went around, and many doctors were told, they would literally go up to the doctor's office. So did the Brigham, and they'd say to a primary care office with patients in the waiting room, nurses there and the secretaries, and they'd say, "Where are the doctors?" And they said, "Why?" "Well, they either have to join us or die," because everyone was joining into giant systems. And that's what ended up, that was one of the things that was happening. a series of meetings probably explain the crazy things that were happening as they were trying to consolidate healthcare, have one system, and then it would be one government system for Massachusetts. So one was in October 2011 at a Massachusetts Medical Society meeting. That's where they print the New England Journal of Medicine. 2 people spoke. The first was the then president of it, Dr. Linda with the Y Young. She was a pediatrician there. And she said, quote, "We have to do this for Barack. It's his re-election campaign next year, and he's counting on us," unquote. That's burnt into my soul. The next speaker was from Chicago. Yes, Chicago, a neurologist. And the sum of what he said was, neurosurgeons make too much money. Doctors don't make enough. We need to redistribute the wealth. That's his quote, not mine. I forget his name offhand. At any rate, that was one quote. The next quote was from February 14, 2012. And in that case, there was a town hall meeting for Massachusetts. This isn't federal, this is Massachusetts. And the head of the House in Massachusetts, I forget his name now, he said, quote, "We have to take from the top 20% of hospitals and give to the bottom 20% of hospitals. After all, this is directly from the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx," unquote. There was no sound in the room. This was a videotape. I have a copy in my garage. This was said, and no one spoke to all these small business owners. No one spoke except one person who said, "Jesus Christ," and that was the second one. The next one was on the cover of the Boston Globe in the summer. I forget the exact date. I have it, the reference. It was a weekday, I think a Tuesday. And on the Boston Globe, the then Governor Deval Patrick, signed a bill because a series of things since Romney Care had started were such that he said, quote, I'm paraphrasing now, "This marks the end of fee-for-service medicine in Massachusetts as we know it." That's a paraphrase. That's not an exact quote. That's when I realized I had to close my practice. Most doctors either retired early, moved to New Hampshire or Portland, Maine. Some moved to Florida as I did. I chose here because my billing lady's son ran my billing service. So that's why I came to Sarasota, Florida. And some joined the giant groups actually, and they regret that now. So a lot of my friends talked to me over the years that I made the right move. But I find it grossly unethical. Anyway, by October 2012, which is a week before I left, I went to another Mass Medical Society meeting, this time at the New England Baptist Hospital. I was one of the neurologists there. And everyone was freaking out because I saw all the changes. Doctors groups were splitting up left and right. People didn't know what to do. Some were moving out of the state. Some were going other avenues. They were joining groups. It was very awful. And patients were lost in the shuffles. At any rate, the Mass Medical Society speaker, the lawyer for them, said at this meeting, how did he say it? They looked at themselves as the flagship. It was national. And he said, let me see, "We have come to realize that the reason for spiraling healthcare costs in America is utilization." So he looks, now he translate government speak. So he looks at the 10%, the government elite, and the rest are the great unwashed. So sometimes you dole out money for the great unwashed, and we don't want their Ebolas or coronaviruses, but if it's MS or something, we're not going to worry about that. That's not contagious.
What does utilization mean exactly?
A restriction of care. Basically, it's, as you can well imagine, certain non-medical, non-elected officials who gets what care or treatment or testing.
I have never heard of that word meaning restriction of care, but okay, I'll take it.
In that context.
Okay.
If the government controls all healthcare, then that's what happens.
Right. Could you tell us a little bit about the letter to Rubio, or the letter to whomever you wrote to a senator, I think.
Yes, I did send it to Mr. Rubio, yes.
Yeah, and that's the 17-page letter that I edited to put more context.
Yeah, you edited, thank you, yeah.
And could you just tell us quick what you experienced or witnessed in the last few days about sort of failing healthcare systems in Florida, like hospitals or something?
Well, on the west coast of Florida, it's very stark. you're seeing what's happening nationally. You have a government hospital, and the big one in Sarasota County is Sarasota Memorial. It gets federal, state, and county money, and it has endowments on its endowments. There's serious wealth from, this is international interest. And then you have an example of the ACOs. They're called accountable care organizations, but I assure you it's doublespeak. The last thing there is accountable. The patient may see an NP. They are never to have a doctor there for more than 15 minutes. In fact, it's 11 minutes in their policy, and I know that from a friend of mine that works there. And then they never follow up or follow through. When you have complex patients with multiple overlapping diagnoses, it's hard to discern what's true, and you can't fix things. I'm very good at that. I'm usually a second and third opinion. But I spend the time, I do an exam, I touch the patient, things like that. And when you spend 11 minutes on a new patient, that's madness. My chairman always said a follow-up in neurology should be 30 minutes, a new patient should be an hour. He said, I don't care if it's an ADD or, because they might have something you don't realize. It's sort of the analogy. You go to the skin doctor, the dermatologist for the rash on your right hand and have them only look at that? Or do you go to a dermatologist that strips you naked and finds the melanoma in your shoulder you didn't know about? You want the second doctor, I would think, right? You want someone that's thorough to make sure you're not missing anything.
Exactly.
That's the problem. The system isn't made for the second way. It's only for the first way.
Isn't that amazing, guys? I mean,
well, they want to make it, what most of the world is, you have an elite medical group like Cuba, and their medicine for the elite isn't bad. And then you have everyone else, which is horrible. Or the UK, I could go on and on. The coronavirus issue is bringing out the dysfunction of the healthcare system, not just in America, but internationally. But I was telling you earlier, what was fascinating, I just heard it today, in West Virginia. See, the Obamacare thing is very much a living thing. It has, as it were, bombs that go off every few months that affect policies throughout all of medicine, both outpatient and inpatient. Right. And what's happening is everyone tries to survive, and that includes the private hospitals. So the private hospitals lately have had to try to do a lot of quick procedures, quick knee replacement, get them in, get them out very quickly, and that way they can try to make a little money. Or if they have robotic surgery for whatever they're doing, prostatectomy or whatever it might be. And what's happening is, if you have to pay for those doctors that do those very precise, constantly changing procedures, but it's expensive to get those doctors and that equipment. And of course, in technology, things change year by year, of course. At any rate, you try to do that, but it's hard to keep your volume up and get the right type of patients for it. So what happens is they can't compete and they die. And in West Virginia, I found it today, 2 hospitals just went belly up and they were for sale. But suddenly we had this outbreak of coronavirus, and now we need those hospital beds, and they're just sitting there idly because the system wouldn't allow them to exist. It's crazy. Fee for service, it would have happened, but nope, not now. That's what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I can keep going. Michael, unfortunately, Michael's very patient. He went through a lot of the stuff that I had in the letter, and I have more to add to it, but the gist is in that letter.
So I have a question.
Yes.
When the hurricanes hit us and the tornadoes, certain states are well equipped for that. Florida, right?
Yes, they are.
The other states along there, and so they have contingency plans. They have emergency operations centers and FEMA, and they work on that, and they definitely have good plans in place.
Yes, they do.
And in this situation, a virus such as this,
correct,
it seems that all the states should have contingency plans in place.
Yes.
If something like this should happen, this is how we deploy a new hospital.
Correct.
And everyone seems to be acting like we need everything from the federal government. They want to blame the federal government.
No, you're in Massachusetts, and New York is like that as well. Florida doesn't feel that way.
Right. Well, it seems like that seems to be the message, where your state leaders, your state organizations are the ones that should have emergency preparedness plans in place for something
Correct.
like
It's good to have the federal government do their own thing as well, but yes.
Right.
Right.
And every state is handling this situation differently.
Yes.
And I mean, this is probably, a scenario where they should have been doing practice drills, right? They should have been doing rehearsals. What do we call them, John?
Not dry runs is another word.
That's right. Dry runs, drills.
I know what you mean.
We run these exercise like it's really happening so we can see how we react when it really occurs.
Yes. I agree. There's a little more to the New York City story, I think For the last year, they've been short on all supplies, gowns, gloves, masks, and ventilators, and they've been complaining for a year. This is before coronavirus.
Right.
And I don't know if you heard this about a week ago, I guess, a show, Tucker Carlson, it was on Fox News Network. He broke out that there was an actual warehouse of ventilators in New York City, and the governor should have known of it, and it's just sitting there idle, and he's yelling, and the governor's yelling at President Trump.
Right.
And what's fascinating is Mr. Cuomo went on some network, I saw the clip, and he didn't apologize. He said, well, we're waiting for the apex and we're going to use those ventilators then. I don't understand what that means. We can reuse ventilators, right? They're not a one-time thing. Just saying. Right. I don't understand that. No, there's a lot of dysfunction. I'm going to be polite.
Yeah, very, very much. Well, tell us just, maybe they have, Ingrid has not heard it yet, maybe, nor John, how you got around to writing your book on the game as played, because yes. We got to know each other.
I gave my first copy to my wife.
Oh, okay.
And you actually held it, Michael, and you two were nice enough to visit me in Florida before the changes occurred.
Right. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit. Actually, I can send you the PDF, right? You authorize me to send them the PDF?
Of course, whatever you want, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just tell them a little bit about this book, because when I first read your 5 booklets,
I call them booklets, yes.
I thought this was a game changer in a way. But go ahead, tell us a little bit.
I want to thank you for saying that. It's helped me. I wrote it as a catharsis because of what happened to me with Massachusetts. I had always thought for years and said to friends of mine for years that when I would retire, I would write 3 books about neurology for average people. And the series would be called Children of the Sand, because we're all descended from the African bush. They are a hunter-gatherer people. So when we live more like hunter-gatherers in a sense, if we eat right, sleep right, exercise right, we would all live more healthfully and have better psychological and physical health.
Right, exactly right.
Right, and so I wrote this book, and it's 5 parts. They were originally 5 chapters, and now they're 5 booklets to 1 book. I wrote this as a catharsis I wanted to figure out why it is giant government occurs throughout history and time. I base it on mainly 1 book, but I do a lot more with it. The 1 book was written by the best friend of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He's known for the Gulag Archipelago and many other works. He was a physicist, actually, Mr. Solzhenitsyn. But this man's name is Igor Shafarevich. And Shafarevich was part of the underground. He was a mathematician. Oh, I would have given you a copy of the book. I'm sorry.
I have the book somewhere.
In 1978.
I have it somewhere. Go ahead.
1978, I believe, at the Harvard commencement speech. I think it was 78, 79, I forget now. Mr. Solzhenitsyn spoke for graduation, and he referenced that book. It's called The Socialist Phenomenon. In Central and Eastern Europe, they often use the term giant government or statism, and they call it socialism. When you begin to go into it, you realize it is pretty much the same thing. So giant government. So I used his book, but I wrote it in a manner like Oprah Magazine, actually. I wanted people to feel what has happened. So there were 5 booklets. The first booklet is how you may get to giant government. the irony is when I had this finally published 2 weeks ago, the timing was impeccable, but I didn't plan it that way. Michael knows that. It's how you get to giant government is basically, they call it locust formation or swarming, or one might say hysteria. And we're seeing that right now. People are giving up their rights, wanting to be parented quickly, but they're all acting in a herd mentality. It's rather remarkable. This has been studied since Dr. Lebon, Lebon, he wrote his books in the late 1800s. Hitler and Mussolini studied him, actually.
It's fascinating.
I have something here. It says from Ingrid Centurion. Is that from Ingrid?
Ingrid said, "Wow." She wrote, "Wow." She's wowing you.
Oh, thank you.
Wowing you.
Yes.
Now I can hear you.
Yes.
I have to explain. I think she'll want you on her show.
Oh my goodness.
I also would be honored, Michael. Thank you.
Yes.
Don't you think you want him on your show?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we need to talk about this. It's history, you know. We've got to learn from our past and see what's happening right in front of our eyes, which I think people are trying to recreate the same history.
Oh, yes. I don't think, well, some people are trying to recreate it. Others are trying to pretend that they can do it anew, that for some reason, all the other people, ethnic groups and people throughout history and time, that somehow they're smarter and better than them. I assure you, we're still Homo sapiens. We haven't changed that much. We think we have. That's called narcissism.
Oh yeah, that's
sorry.
that.
Well, it is.
You got John laughing.
Who knew? We are, you know, we've discussed these psychopaths and the flying monkeys for hours and hours.
Okay.
And
unfortunately, Michael, it doesn't grow old, does it?
It doesn't grow old.
It doesn't grow old.
It's the same old.
Oh, well, I think of it as a play, and it keeps you keep getting the same show every night, different actors, but it's the same play. Am I wrong? Throughout all history, it is.
You're right.
It's unfortunate. I'd like to think we could change the play. That's the point of my book.
Yeah.
If you have enough knowledge, really, I hope so.
You know, I have to tell you what it is that I learned from talking with Pat.
Yes, sir.
Number one, we are so much in sync in terms of our education. I mean, Pat got a very classical education with Latin and Greek, right? Correct.
In high school, let alone college.
And sometimes we share things about Latin, which is fun. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to realize how little the current generation, the people in college now, know about anything about the Romans, for example. And I find it disturbing that...
That is a very good word, disturbing.
Yeah, it's very disturbing that the word Rubicon, you know, crossing the Rubicon doesn't mean anything to most. They don't understand who Caesar was, or vaguely, and they think that if he was assassinated in the Roman Senate, it was because some bad guys did it to him. Poor guy. They don't understand anything. It's horrific. It's horrific.
Yeah, it is.
And so this is our job now, it seems, to not only teach philosophy, not only teach languages and humanities and literature,
I agree,
but to teach culture, you know, American culture, you know, Western culture. We have to
Western
teach
culture.
That. And this is where I think we can make, you know, because of the crisis, we can create these podcasts.
Yes.
And I would like you to be in on the podcast, or, you know, this, what we call the Internet Cafe with Doc Gendre, that's me, and Professor Centurion.
I think it's wonderful.
I think it'd be a great idea. And John and Jim and you and others, you know, who knows, yes. Right?
Excellent. I view it this way, that it's like if I see a tornado coming and you're facing me and you're not looking at the tornado because you refuse to turn around and look at it, I'm trying to tell you there's a tornado coming. You have to make preparations now. And you have to listen to me, because if you don't, I'm going to have to leave you there and you're going to get killed. I'm just trying to help you. That's how I view it. And some people will not turn around. They will not.
And
I've
I
seen it over
and
and
I
over.
view it the same exact way. That's why I was saying, you know, we have a hurricane evacuation plan, we have tornado plans.
Right.
When this stuff comes, there is no stopping it. It
Right.
literally, you know, knocks everything in its path. It destroys everything.
Right.
That's how we need to show our younger generation and individuals of what's happening right in front of our eyes.
I agree. That's
Ingrid,
very
do you want to tell? I don't think Pat knows too much about you. So if you don't mind just giving him a little bit of the 5 to 10 minute spiel on Ms. Centurion.
Yes, so I was born in New Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey. My father was an immigrant from Argentina. He was a professional soccer player. He traveled to Italy, Canada, and then he made his way to New York. He met my mom. My mom was from Puerto Rico. They married and they had 4 children.
God bless.
I'm the youngest of 4. And when my dad was 30 years old and my mom was 28, they were in a car accident in Camden, New Jersey.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my father died. My mom was in the car as well, and she was severely injured. So that really changed our lives. My mom,
forgive me, how old were you then, Ingrid?
I was 2 years old. My brother was 7. My sister was 9, and the oldest was 12.
Wow.
So, you know, my mom suffered a lot of injury to her head. You know, she was super depressed. Now she, you know, after she got out of the hospital, she had to take care of her 4 children. She had to go to work. She was a waitress. She worked hard. She worked 2-3 jobs. She was always working and never home. You know, we were those latchkey kids who would come home from school and lock the door, do our homework. My sisters had to take care of me and my brother, and they had to become adults and help out. And so we worked very hard. Everyone worked hard in New Jersey. Everybody worked hard. I feel, you know, all my friends were from different parts of you know, African-American, Italian-American, Indian-American, you know, a place of culture. And everyone worked hard to make it in life. We never were on any type of, you know, government assistance. You know, we worked hard.
I grew up inner city poor in Boston. We were the same way.
Right.
But where I grew up, everyone was on welfare and everything except my family. My parents both worked. I understand 100%. But your mother, God bless her, that's even worse. Wow.
My mother saved her money and she put us through Catholic school because
I did as well.
Right. So it's like here when you can't have or expect the government to you know, pull you out of poverty. We as individuals, we have to work hard, and if you want to rise and you want to make it in America, you know, it's the American dream. And I feel that, you know, I am first generation American, and many of us maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 8th generation, and all our parents were immigrants. They came here from somewhere and to make a better life, and I believe in hard work. And so I went on through school, and I was a straight A student. I was like my dad, a great athlete. I got multiple scholarships for sports to go to college, but I wanted to become a pilot. And I had saved $3,000. And at 16, my mom drove me to the airport and I became a private pilot.
Wow, that's an accomplishment.
4 months later, I was a private pilot. I laid out my plan. I flew 3-4 times a week. You need that consistency. You have to fly, you have to do stalls, you have to do all this, you know, landings and stuff like that. And in 4 months, I became a private pilot. Then I went on to become a commercial pilot, single engine, multi-engine. I had all my ratings by the time I was 21 years old. And I got an ROTC scholarship, Army ROTC scholarship. And then I went into the military. So I went in the military, I got aviation. I was telling John, you know, if I didn't get aviation, I was going to be an MP, military police, because I was going to be so mad. I was just going to arrest people left and right for breaking the laws. But that was my number 2, MP. I was like, what am I going to do if I'm not going to be a pilot? Oh, God.
You're tough.
An order.
Right. So anyway, it works out great here. So I go in the Army. I become a Huey pilot. They send me to the maintenance test pilot school. My first assignment was in Iraq. And then I got a Black Hawk transition, and then I was an instructor pilot as well. And then I got a fixed wing transition in military intelligence collection platform, signals intelligence. So I deployed to Iraq. Over there, we were looking for terrorist groups. We were supporting the guys on the ground, providing them imagery intelligence, signals intelligence. And it was really exciting. And then my last assignment was working along the border at Joint Task Force North.
You mean the Mexican-U.S. border?
Yeah, the U.S. border, southwestern border, 1,203 miles of ground border. Then we have maritime, we have air. We have such a huge mission in protecting our borders. But I flew an aircraft with cameras and sensors on it, and we flew every night, and we helped the Border Patrol find those illegals coming across. We would call out the grid coordinates of where they were, and then the Border Patrol would come in and, arrest them. And I saw what was really going
you just broke up.
Going on in our Border Patrol agents.
You just broke up. Sorry. I can hear you now. You broke up for a moment. Sorry.
Yeah, I said, so along our borders, it's such a huge mission. We don't have enough Border Patrol agents.
No,
we don't have enough aircraft and equipment monitoring our border. We don't have enough ground sensors on our border. I was actually the science and technology officer at Joint Task Force. And I would look, and I actually did research of all the technology along our border and study to determine what is the best resources for our borders. And really, it depends based on the terrain. Okay. In the deserts of Texas, you need some type of technology, but in the swamps of Mississippi, you'll need something else. So you can't say there's this one thing is going to make a huge difference. But one thing we do need is more Border Patrol agents.
Sure.
At that time, when I was at Joint Task Force North in 2010, we had more police officers in New York City than along our whole southwestern border. Does that make any sense?
No, it doesn't. Right. But I believe it.
That's right. And those agents are out there by themselves.
You don't hear this stuff.
No, you don't hear this stuff. They're out there by themselves. One man or one woman in a vehicle, and they're covering 10, 20 miles of border. It's tough.
Yeah, it's
and
nuts.
We have aircraft, but at that time, they were only flying in the daytime. And when do they cross?
At night.
They cross at night, right? Exactly, because most of my missions were at nighttime. But it just opens your eyes to the threats that we face, and not just on the ground. I talk about this. Now, what about the air? So when I was working. Now I'm going way too long into all my stories, Michael.
No,
so when I was working along
puts
the
it in
border,
context.
Right. When I was working along the border, we had ultralights that were crossing our borders and dropping 300 pounds to 400 pounds of marijuana.
Oh my God.
I wanted, and they would do this multiple times. And I wanted to come up with a tactical plan to take them out. So I reached out to a company up here in Massachusetts called Kinetic North America. And they're an awesome high-tech company. And they make all kinds of amazing things. And I said, help me. I have this challenge. Come to El Paso and give us a briefing on technologies that you think would be able to take out this threat. And they came out and they gave us a great briefing to us and to the Border Patrol and to all the law enforcement agencies that I worked with out there. And we started to work on this challenge that we have, that we had back then. It has slowed down, and now, things change. And but the Border Patrol agents are still out there, and I know many of them. And anyway, I can go on and on and on about stories along our border.
The last 3 years, do you think it's improved a lot? I think so.
Well, yes, it has improved. Threats change.
Sure.
The threats change, their tactics change. Then there's the maritime borders of, how do you protect,
Yeah, no one talks about that. Right?
No one talks about that. And I've gone out on a mission out in San Diego, out there, on one of the Border Patrol's, high-speed boats. And It was amazing. Like at nighttime out there, it's unbelievable what they have to do. And they work with the United States Coast Guard, and they work with air assets as well. But just even think of being out there, and your job is to protect, incoming boats. It's tough. It's a tough mission.
But these are also criminals. These aren't just people.
Yeah, these are drug dealers.
These aren't young families trying to survive. These are criminals.
Yeah. This is really where I want to step in to just point out that all those people that are prevented from entering, as much as a lot, not all, but a lot, are dealing with drugs, are involved in drugs. They're involved in human trafficking. And you have the coyotes, the people who actually make money from exploiting people south of the border and turning them into illegal immigrants, right? Isn't that it, basically?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So it's just trafficking. They're slaves.
They're slaves. I mean, then imagine the amount of hardship and death caused by those drugs smuggled in.
That's right.
It's just, and it makes so much sense that these things should be, as much as possible, prevented, right?
Right.
And
there's black markets. I remember a friend of mine, there's a lot of flea markets in Arizona, or flea markets. We don't have that many here, but in some of the flea markets.
We used to. My father went to a lot of them when we were growing up.
Right. And,
right in Revere.
Right. Some of the flea markets, at some of the flea markets, they may have like shampoo and some products, and you think that they're, the real brand, Revlon or whatever else. And many times they're not. They were made in China, or they were made in other places where, it's unhealthy for you, and you need to be very careful. People are profiting, and these things have been going on.
Wow.
So I just want to wrap it up a little bit, because this is sort of part of what I consider to be cultural literacy, because, law and order is essentially a part of the civilized life. If we don't have law and order, we have crime, we have drugs, we have, bad stuff happening. We have human trafficking.
We have the Lord of the Flies, right?
Yes, we have the Lord of the Flies, exactly right. And that's where actually maybe we have to combine these, stark realities and important concepts with things like what you just said, Pat. We have to show the sort of modern day memes, or the modern day ways of expressing these realities, which are bad realities. And if we have to sort of convey it to the young people that it comes at a cost to not do something to defend yourself. Right?
I do have two ideas to help convey that, though.
Okay, go ahead, please. I'm taking notes.
No, that's all right. To be a person of influence, the two best ways are, especially for the internet generation, is picture words. And I always think of Steve Jobs with an iPod is your favorite song in your pocket. Everyone kind of knows what he meant when he said that concept. The other is, as Jesus was the king of was parables, stories. Stories are the way people most begin to understand what you're talking about.
So stories and parables, right?
Yes, stories and parables.
Right.
That way people can best understand it, because you're dealing, Michael, you and I have talked about this at length. We're all wired differently. We have all different personality types. But what matters in life is your hat, your belief system. And you can change your hat, but your belief system, but you can't change how you're wired. And in a normal society, the different people with their different personality types, they work and grow together. That's a normal, healthy society. Our current society is dysfunctional, largely because of the belief systems, but also because we tend to have our own personality types that we only stay with, instead of meeting with all different types of people. And it's interesting what the dysfunction it's interesting, but it's sad, the dysfunction that happens. The stories, I think, and picture words are the best ways out. Michael, Professor Gendre, I must ask you, isn't it true though that the younger generation, they look at people older like, oh, they're wrong. Why listen to you? That's what my fear is. And we see that throughout history and time, that the youth, once they no longer appreciate the culture and the history of their people,
Right. I agree.
bad things happen.
Well, maybe we can have a younger person step in if he wants to say something.
Not me.
That was good, Jim. I like it.
Oh, John, you're still muted. He's muted.
We're muted? Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe
there he is. There's our youngin.
Is it working?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see it.
Good. I don't know how that keeps happening, but yeah, I would have to say I agree. I mean, if we don't really know from our past, we're doomed to repeat it. In I guess my generation, or even before that, you've got this whole. I'd say with my younger brother, he knows everything. I think it's just a thing in time where you have to gain experience and you have to start.
Yes.
I grew up always listening, paying attention, and watching. Like for instance, earlier you were talking about how like people need to pay more attention and be more serious about this virus, and I remembered how I was having a conversation with my grandmother, and they were talking on. She loves CNN. She loves it and never turns it off. Mm-hmm. But they said they don't on the television. They were saying they don't understand why they're not the younger 20 to 30 generations not listening to all these warnings. They're going out to the beaches. They're getting infected, and then I had to stop and think for a second. I said, well, I can think of at least one thing. You blew the West Nile virus thing out of excuse my language, out of proportion, the Zika virus, the Ebola, and you made everything sound so extreme. How did you not expect them to not think that this was going to be another one of these episodes of the same end result? And like, it's sort of that story, the boy who cried wolf. Like, I mean, they're not, once people actually that they know personally start dropping, then we'll start actually seeing them stop. But I just saw not long ago that there was people out having fun, like even on my drive, they were just all hanging out. And I mean, I guess it's negative to say, but Darwinism, I mean, it's gonna, people are just gonna learn the hard way. But my generation, I mean, I would say that they should listen, but you can't really put all your eggs in that basket.
Well, there's something you said the other time, John, which is that manners were not understood, appreciated, and taught to your generation. I think you used the word manners.
Yeah, manners I was really big on when I lived in Japan, and how the first 5 years of their education was solely manners. It was solely how you treat one another and things like that. And you come over here and you see the way things are taught. I mean, if we wanted to change anything that's being done right now, we need to start with our education system. And then we'd probably see change within 20 years if we effectively change that. That's if. I mean, we start paying teachers the real big dollars instead of these people sitting in chairs growing old in Senate, and we'll actually start seeing a change. But are we going to ever see that? No. I mean, we just have to have the parents to care more about their children and their lives, that they actually are there having those dinner talks with them, sitting down, asking them how their day was, and telling them to turn their cell phones off just for an hour so they can interact with their kids and see what's going on with their lives. And we have that opportunity now with this virus that everybody's stuck underneath the same household. So
in that weird sense, you're absolutely right. You're all in Boston. Do you remember the blizzard of 78, Jim?
Yes, definitely.
Everybody talks about that. And I remember a comedian was talking about it once when I was in college, and he said, what? And he was speaking about it, and someone in the audience got up and was drunk and said, That's what everyone cared about each other, and he was going on, and he said, yeah, go sit down. But the point was, he's right. People really got to communicate. That's what I was talking about earlier. We are descended from people that interacted with each other. We're all imperfect beings, but we grow together and learn together, but we care about each other. That's what it's about. We don't hear that. You're right about the virus issues, but there are other catastrophes or in contingent plans we have to be prepared for catastrophes. And some of them are our own people we find in history. Yeah, it's interesting.
But I want to make two comments.
Yes.
About what John said. The teachers are not actually the average teacher K through 12 are probably paid okay, and certainly the people with tenure professions in the.
I think that depends on the part of the country, Michael. Because
Right.
in Florida they're treated terribly.
Okay, I'll take that.
However,
However, that's not the main problem in my view.
I
The
agree.
main problem is that the vast majority of the school districts and in America in general, they don't hire the top achievers in the schools of education. In other
Right.
words, you end up with teachers who are the bottom tier or third of those students that go into the schools of ed. So in my view, the schools of ed have to disappear. The teachers have to really know something really thoroughly. It would be math, it would be biology, it would be engineering, it would be obviously philosophy, languages, and so on. But they have to know these things very well. In other words, they have to have something like a master's degree, and they have to sort of graduate at the top of their class. And if you do have those people who have real knowledge of content, then they would impart it with passion to their students. That's where I think the problem is, because I mean, I hear it from Stenderstotsky and other people that in America, unfortunately, the teachers are from the lower third or lower tier of the people who go to the schools of ed. That's a big, big problem.
Wow.
You didn't know that, right?
I kind of figured that.
Yeah, that's sad.
Everything I expected, yeah.
On the other hand, manners and the family and the community and, things like that, of course, absolutely matter. I mean, I personally had significant influence from the extended families families, I'll put it in the plural, that I was connected with when I was a young boy, really.
I grew up that way as well, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that, I don't know when it started to happen, but I saw a lot of the lack of discipline in the schools.
Right.
Like, growing up in Paterson, New Jersey, and that was a rough neighborhood. And my sister went to East Side High School. That's the movie that they made Stand By Me on. So,
I remember that. Yeah.
It was a school that was out of control, but they got a principal to go in there, and he did a great job in cleaning it up. But what happened? What was going on at that time period where, we lost family, we lost the discipline in the school, and it seemed like that was the deterioration of, great teachers. Back then, I think we're in the school system. I remember growing up, I felt I had great school teachers in the public school system.
It's very important. It's very important. Even when they're not too friendly, they teach you stuff, and you will always remember what it is they taught you.
That's right.
And that's the key. That's just the key.
And so, and that's a culture thing. Right? Yeah. You go into a school, it's the leadership at the top that sets the tone of discipline, order, respect. And I think
that's a good word, respect. That's correct.
Right. Because it's all about respect. They have to respect their teachers, they have to respect the leadership, they have to respect their parents, and they've lacked all of that. They don't respect their parents, right? So why should they come to school and respect anyone else? when they've lost the values at home, and we need to get back to this today.
It's interesting. I was thinking we had a dog. It's an interesting analogy here. And she was she was a rescue. She was a greyhound mostly. She's a beautiful dog. But when we would try to walk her, she would growl at people and other dogs. And she was not 100% greyhound. She was part retriever, I think. I forget what they said. But anyway, golden retriever, I think. Anyway, so she was a good sized dog, but she was a scaredy dog. But she would growl and bark all the time. And I found out from a trainer, they do that because they feel you're not going to protect them. You're not taking the chance to discipline them. You may spoil them, but what they need is to know you care about them, even if you whack them on the butt or the nose. And they need to know where the limits in life are so they can grow up to be a good dog and that you're the head of their pack. And that's kind of true with kids.
The boundaries.
They need to know boundaries. Exactly. They need to know their place. When I was growing up in Boston, everyone in the generations, they were the World War II generation, like my father. We were told many times, you don't know anything, sit down, shut up, and you might learn something. That's what I grew up with. And you know what?
And you did.
I did.
Lo and behold.
It's true.
Right. No, that's great. I love it.
So it wasn't that long ago. I think it can change again. But people have a lot of it. The parents, though, are part of the problem in those school age, those years as well, because they tend to helicopter and they intimidate the teachers too. There's a lot more dynamic going on. That's
true. I agree. I think that the parents just have a way of bearing down on the teachers and intimidating them. Right. And somehow there has to be a code of ethics for parents not to intimidate the teachers.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're not teachers. They need to sit down, be quiet, and let the teachers teach. That's their job. We each have to do our job and respect each other for it, I think.
There should also be, when I think of the things that influenced me when I was in my teens, there were a couple of programs outside of the school which had to do with the religious education. It was Catholic, but it was actually it was a Greek Catholic outfit, and they created a group of kids my age, 15, 16, 17, and it was really helpful to get out of the school, be away from the parents, and sort of socialize. It was not very, very social, but it was social enough that we did outings, and it was fascinating. I have some really good memories of that, sort of being away from the school and being away from the parents at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Because the mentoring of the mentoring, there was some level of mentoring that could happen, and it was very important, I think.
I agree. That's why I miss the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and all that.
Exactly. Maybe that's also a big loss, that the Boy Scouts have disappeared as a cultural anchor for boys, and Girl Scouts for girls, right?
As my crazy friend Robert Burke, that unfortunately Michael, he does say it. He said, on purpose. The left does this on purpose. They know to break those things that you just said are good.
It's terrible, because that's really where kids learn invaluable things.
I agree.
Very good. Well, so the topic of cultural literacy is something that is very apropos, shall we say? And, we could come up with a curriculum if we sort of jot down a few things. I mean,
Michael, I would love to do that. In my 5 booklets, I tried to throw an awful lot of cultural stuff and assume the reader has no knowledge of it. Sometimes I'll explain in a footnote, but I did that on purpose because people need to remember this stuff. It's important.
So I will circulate the PDF of your book among everyone here on this call, which is not too many, but then among my students. Is that okay too? Am I authorized to do it?
I am honored, yes.
Very good. Well,
Truth for its own
very good. Any comments, additional comments by anybody? Jim, Avallon, or John, you're good.
Anything, John? I'd be curious. John's interesting. I'd like to hear. Yeah.
You're still muted, John.
Oh, you're muted, John. Sorry.
He must have automatic mute.
My wife would like that.
Would like that.
Oh, I know she would. I know she would.
Honey, your automatic mute is not working today.
Don't encourage her.
It's still not working, John.
It's not working. Oh, sorry.
Never mind.
Can we hear you, John?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
Um,
we can. Yes.
Okay. It seems that I have to like mute it and then unmute it. So I don't. What was the question again?
Oh, about cultural literacy. What do you think about that?
Cultural literacy? We talking our culture, or I think we should go into other cultures, like
Western culture mainly. People need to understand that because that's where freedom comes from. I think that's. Well, Michael's trying to ask it. I didn't mean to circumvent. I'm sorry, Michael. I think that's
Well, John lived in Japan, and then also
Interesting.
outside of, I don't know where you went, but you went in 2 different places, so you have a unique perspective.
yes.
I've definitely learned. Like, I think that like the best way to do something is to be a jack of all trades in some of these aspects, and like get a little bit of why people act in a certain way or why they do some things. Like in my English class, we were talking about, I think it was the Indian culture when it comes to movies and how they don't really focus as much on sci-fi, but as much as it is with real life cases and whatnot. It's just interesting to see how some people live and why they live that way, what kind of beliefs they have. So that way you can change your own beliefs and mold it from there. And I came back to the States and I came back to this country and I was like, well, now I see a lot of how like everybody just kind of falls into a certain line, falls into a certain pattern, but they really don't really understand that they can really go outside their box. But when it comes to, I just say learn as much about everything that you can and just keep learning, never stop learning. Like throw wild curveballs at them, make them think. Honestly, outside of that, the best that they can do is question who they are, like with Alan Watts. Like just continue questioning what it is that drives you to be who you want to become.
The title of this book by Alan Watts, do you know this name?
I do not.
Alan Watts, you do?
No, I'm ignorant.
Okay, I'll send you on the taboo against knowing who you are.
Oh, I would like that.
I think you'd like that.
I know I would.
Buddhist, but he's very good. I leafed through it, and I thought I detected some, echoes or some reminiscences of Aristotle and the rest, and he takes shots at some people like Rousseau. So I obviously.
Well, then we're friends.
Yes, we're friends. No, I think what John is saying is there are cultures and subcultures, cultures like different cultures entirely, but also subcultures within America that could be investigated or at least explored. Let's just say explored a little bit. Like, for example, Sela, the Cambodian woman who came to be interviewed by me, and she talked about respect also. She obviously felt that in their Cambodian culture, respect is paramount, and it was totally missing when her kids went to a public school in Lynn or in Amesbury, I forget which one. So I think that's something to explore probably within America. There are different subcultures that are, worthy of understanding, even though those people will become American and be part of the American main life, nonetheless, they have cultures and subcultures that should be explored. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I think that what is missing a lot in American education right now is an understanding of languages. And if things were better, if the kids had the opportunity to learn Spanish or French or German or Russian or Chinese, at least one, and then went and lived, a month in Mexico, in Quebec, in Berlin, wherever, I think they'd get a feel for the diversity of cultures, and they would appreciate their own culture and the other cultures too. There's no antagonism between liking another culture and still liking your culture too. And people, I just want to have Ingrid step in because she obviously had a connection with Spanish-speaking cultures, correct, Ingrid?
Oh yes, and I've always loved cultures, and growing up, I used to go to Argentina, and that was a different culture, and I always felt, wow, people are so much more loving and warm there. When you went into a room, you had to say hello to everyone, and you gave everyone a kiss. You literally gave everyone a kiss when you got there and when you left. Like, that is, we don't do that here.
Yeah, no.
And that was I always remember that. And just growing up with my best friend who was Indian American, she had different cultures. They came here from India, and we all respected that. We another good friend of mine, she was Cuban American, and they did things a little different, and I just feel we appreciated that, and we respected all that. We when you live in a neighborhood where I guess everyone's the same, you don't get to see that.
Right.
And I mean, everybody talks about diversity today. I mean, I don't know how this all started with diversity. When you really look around, there is no diversity here. Everyone's doing the same thing. And
I must tell you, I despise that word diversity. I like melting pot. The reason I hate the DI is much like in divorce. It means to separate into two, and obviously more than that with diverse. It's really more melting pot. I must tell you, this month marks the 400th anniversary of my mother's family from coming here. I'm descended from the beer maker on the Mayflower, John Alden. We have every ethnic group and religion in our family except Muslim and Baha'i, but we're dysfunctional. But I think it's great.
I would love you to repeat this, because basically you are a descendant from someone who came out of the Mayflower, right?
Yes.
And still you want to say something truthful, which is that you are in fact connected to all kinds of other branches of the human race, right?
Of course. Yes.
I mean, that's fantastic. I can understand the concept.
No, it's just America.
Right.
It's just America. Right.
Right.
Mm.
I think that to be an incredibly very good point for cultural literacy, that you can believe in the melting pot, and at the same time be interested in Irish culture and your own. You kind of taught me about the Black Irish. I did not know. Could you explain that quickly, and then maybe
sure. And it depends on what part of Ireland you're from, but there's the true Irish. My wife's 100% true Irish.
You mean you're not true Irish?
I'm not. No, I'm a mutt. But I'm mostly dark Irish. We're from the Armada people, Spanish Armada. Oh well. And then there's the Black Irish, are the people of Jamaica and Montserrat, and the Montserrat has the volcano. That's why it got partly depopulated. But its flag has a shamrock that's black because they're half black and half Irish. And in Ireland, they know that, the three types of Irish. That's just, and that's part of what they call the diaspora. Yeah. So I got relatives that are all of it and more.
Exactly. And you know, the same sort of interesting combo, because you're not a pure mutt, you're a mixed mutt.
I don't know what a pure mutt is.
Well, that's exactly the point. And you know, the Italians, or the Italians, they would have the same stories. You know, we're from the south of Italy, we're Sicily. You know, they're all different somewhat.
As a neurologist, that's good. Otherwise, you don't want to be a product of limited gene pool. Your IQ tends to fall precipitously.
All right. So on that brilliant note, and then as an encouragement for the future generations to mix and
I agree.
and do the right thing and have many kids that will mix, right? That's the gist.
Well, that we're all children of the sand.
And we're still children of the sand.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much. This was a very interesting conversation, I thought. And
Thanks to all.
whenever we get together again, we'll share with other people at Middlesex and in Beverly. I think I'm gonna, use the podcast to put on BevCam, which I haven't done in a long time.
Okay.
We'll keep you posted.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.